Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. For everyone who's on the East Coast of the United States, Boker Tov, good morning. And for those who are joining us in Israel, what are we at? Erev Tov. It is early evening. We are so excited for this opportunity, and we're really glad that you're all here for a conversation with Anat Hoffman of Women of the Wall. I want to thank Congregation Beth El, and particularly our women's group, the Beth Els, for sponsoring this event and connecting with Anat and her wonderful team to be with us today. We're excited to hear what Anat has to say, as well as to be able to engage in dialogue and ask all the questions that we have. Anat, I'm sure you'll be able to answer all of them and more. And in an hour's time, we'll know everything we need to know and have many more questions too. So we're going to begin this morning with a short video, a powerful video. So just give me a moment to bring it up.
People ask me every day, what do I do to look the way that I do? When I tell them it's 99% diet, they usually give me some.
Hi, I'm Tammy Gottlieb, Vice Chair of Women of the Wall. I've been coming to the Western Wall to pray with Women of the Wall for almost 13 years. I cry there very few times. Most of the time, I don't let the evil get to me. But on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, it was just too difficult. A bunch of incited boys, without an ounce of respect, grabbed a suitcase full of our prayer books and tore them to shreds. They stepped on the pages and on my hands. They tore the pages and threw them in my face because of their religious radicalism. I saved what I could, and with a broken suitcase in my arms, I went into the women's section. Once there, surrounded by my friends, I cried. The powerful prayer service we had after this horrible event proved that what we were doing is so important. All the horrible feelings disappeared when I caught a glimpse of one of the young girls that came to pray with us. Especially now, I ask you to join Women of the Wall, stand by our side, and be part of our struggle. Support us.
It is a powerful video.
It certainly is.
So
Anat,
shalom
can I give you
to all the Beth Els, and thank you for enduring this video. Not easy to watch it. Yes, Rabbi.
I'd love to read your bio so everyone knows the Gdula that's joining us today, and then I'll hand it right off to you. Anat Hoffman, an Israeli born in Jerusalem, has served as the executive director of the Israel Religious Action Center, IRAC, since 2002. Her position at IRAC places her at the forefront of the effort to advance religious pluralism in the state of Israel. As executive director of IRAC, Anat has fought and won recognition of reform and conservative conversions by the state. She has led the struggle against gender segregation in the public domain, including on public buses, airplanes, and a national radio station. In her teens, Anat was Israel's swimming champion. I didn't know that. Where she learned to dive headfirst into the deep end. This skill gave her the strength necessary to carry out her work in the past and today. Anat has led Women of the Wall for over 3 decades, in their struggle toward gender equality at the Western Wall, the holiest site of the Jewish faith. She also served on Jerusalem City Council for 14 years, heading the opposition. In this role, she pushed relentlessly for equality and tolerance in a city run by the powerful Orthodox bloc. Anat was selected as Person of the Year by Haaretz in 2013 and was chosen as one of the 50 most influential Jews by the Jerusalem Post in 2014. Globes named her as one of Israel's top women activists in 2018. Anat was awarded her bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA and her master's degree in psychology from Bar-Ilan University. Anat is a mother of 3, grandmother of 1. She lives with her partner in Haifa, and we are just thrilled and so excited to welcome Anat Hoffman to Congregation Beth El Norwalk. Anat.
So Shalom Beth Els, and thank you for this wonderful introduction. I will make outrageous statements for half an hour, and then I'm dying to hear you talk, because I've heard me before, and it is you, your comments, your questions, your experiences at the wall that I'm very curious to hear about. I also want to introduce to you my 2 colleagues, Nechama Namal and Shoshana Hoffman, no relations, but great love. Both of them are my colleagues, and occasionally they join these presentations, and I'm so glad to see both of you here. So yes, it's true that over 30 years ago, actually 33 years ago, in '89, a group of women from all over the world came to Israel to the first international feminist conference in Israel. It was the conference on the empowerment of Jewish women, and quite a large cohort came from the United States, from North America, and they had in their mind the idea during the conference to take a Torah scroll, which they brought with them from abroad, go to the wall and pray the prayer for Israel there together at the women's section and read from Torah. Well, no one has ever tried this before, and as a true blue Jerusalemite, I immediately knew I'm not going, because I knew it was the discotheque of the ultra-Orthodox. It was theirs, not ours, and I guessed that these women would feel very unwelcome. However, one of them, Rivka Hout from Flatbush, New York, turned to me in the lobby of the Hyatt Hotel. I understood all her English except one word. And she said that the hotel won't rent her a folding table for the object she called the Torah. She said that she needs a folding table for that Torah. It took me a while to realize that that's how she pronounces Torah. And she asked me if I own a folding table. Well, that's it. I own a folding table and a megaphone, which is regular equipment for an activist. And I had to come clean and tell her that I own a folding table. And this is how I joined the Women of the Wall. I schlepped the folding table and I witnessed how these pioneering women, these women that came with an idea that could never evolve in Israel because it was bred out of us at birth, us the Israelis. The idea that women can hold a normal service at the women's section. And yes, they were not greeted happily by the powers that be. The women that came from abroad were jeered at, heckled, harassed, cursed out. They never got to take out the Torah and read from it. But days later, when they went back to America, a group of us decided that we will continue. This is an important part of the history of Women of the Wall, because you have to realize you planted that seed. You know what a diaspora is? It's a plant. It's a plant that plants itself by itself in other places. Well, the idea of Women of the Wall is so revolutionary. It is such a final frontier. It is so way above where Israel was. And I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to those brave women from America that came up with this, what seems to be so trivial, with the idea that women should be able to wear a talis. Here's the Women of the Wall talit, for those who haven't seen it. Usually it says on the back, Hashmi'ini et kolech ki kolech arev u'marech navel. Let me hear your voice because it's harmonious, and let me see your beauty, from the Song of Songs. So the idea was to wear a talit, that starts with a T. To pray out loud, that's tefillah, that's also with a T. To put on phylacteries, that's tefillin, that's also with a T. And finally, to read from the Torah, which is also with a T. So what Women of the Wall want to do are 4 activities that begin with the letter T: tefillah, Torah, talit, tefillin. That's it. There'll be a test at the end, so you'll have to remember that. Well, we began coming to the wall to do exactly what our American sisters did. And we encountered enormous amounts of violence, and we went to the Supreme Court. You can't be a law student in Israel and not study one of the many court cases of Women of the Wall, which would go to the heart, the core of religious freedom, freedom from religion and freedom of religion in the state of Israel. And we show up every Rosh Chodesh, every new month. Traditionally in Talmud time, that was a holiday for women. And we attempt to pray a regular morning prayer for Rosh Chodesh. We go to the women section, and we are greeted right from the start with curses and shouts and screams by both men and women. And yet we show up, not dozens, but hundreds of us. It's no picnic, and yet if you join us, it will be the highlight of your trip to Israel, because you'll realize that you're praying with your feet. You're coming to the wall and you are making a statement. So as I said, the violence went on. We were struggling for many decades until one misguided policeman decided to arrest us, arrest women for wearing a talit, for praying out loud, for inciting young girls to having a bat mitzvah, for reading Megillah, for lighting a menorah, for putting on phylacteries. Ladies, we have a person arrested for saying Shema Yisrael out loud at the wall, in a service. The reasons for the arrest was the 13th regulation of the Law of Holy Places. The Law of Holy Places, obviously, states that you shouldn't spit on the wall or piss on the wall and write graffiti on the wall or slaughter animals at the wall, I kid you not, or beg at the wall. That's Regulation 7. Anyone who's been at the wall knows that Regulation 7 is for the birds. And the 13th regulation goes like this: one cannot perform a religious act contrary to local custom, which offends the feelings of others. Anyone performing such an act is guilty of 6 months imprisonment. Now, let's look at that regulation for a minute. Any religious act contrary to local custom. Who decides what's local custom? That offends the feelings of others. Who decides what's offensive to whom? So this regulation, just to give you a clue, is called the Women of the Wall regulation. And it is implemented only against women of the wall, because only we can perform a religious act contrary to local custom which offends the feelings of others. And if you can come up with any other activity that you think breaks the 13th regulation, I'm dying to hear. Anyway, after 56 of us were arrested, and or detained in our local police station for breaking the 13th regulation, something wonderful happened. You woke up. North American Jews woke up. And it became impossible for the then Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Netanyahu, to visit an American community without somebody asking, usually a woman, just like you, asking, what's the hell going on in Israel? Why are you arresting women for doing what we do in synagogue all the time? What's normal? Why are these women arrested? What's wrong with you over there? It came to the point that one of Netanyahu's closest advisors, Yaakov Amidror, wrote a paper called Women of the Wall as a strategic threat to Israeli interests in North America. That paper caused Netanyahu to turn to Natan Sharansky. You remember Anatoly Sharansky, that was the leader of Soviet Jewry? He was then the head of the Jewish Agency. He turned to Sharansky and he said, can you fix this? And Sharansky came up with a plan to negotiate a solution, a compromise at the wall. Women of the Wall had a dramatic vote. Are we going to negotiate with the government? When it was clear that the government is pushing to get us out of the women's section, that the end result of the negotiation will be under what conditions Women of the Wall will move out of the women's section, leaving the women's section only for silent prayer by women who do not wear a talit, who do not put on phylacteries, who do not pray out loud, and do not read from the Torah. Our group had a dramatic vote, and we couldn't agree. Two of our members left the board and became very angry with us. They call themselves Tfilat Nashim Bakotel. They are the true core Women of the Wall, so they claim. But the most of us, the majority of us, hundreds of us, show up every Rosh Chodesh with the Women of the Wall to the Kotel. We sat for 3 years at the Prime Minister's office. I have a parking spot at the Prime Minister's office. And after 1,000 days, we came up with the Kotel Agreement. This agreement, yes, states under what conditions will we move out of the women's section to a new egalitarian, open, pluralistic prayer plaza. And for that big vision of two plazas right next to each other, one ultra-Orthodox, the other egalitarian, open and friendly, that vision is quite enticing. And for that, Women of the Wall were willing to give up our place at the women's section and move to that new egalitarian section. The government of Israel in June 2016 voted 15-5 to implement the Kotel Agreement. We celebrated. Too early, it seems, because exactly a year later, Mr. Netanyahu, because of coalition considerations in his own government, froze the Kotel Agreement, just threw it out the window. We were hoping that it'd be outrage in North America, that North American Jews would say, this is an important achievement. This was a solution to something many of us feel. We should feel at home at the wall. We shouldn't feel when we come there that we are second-rate Jews. However, it went almost without any repercussions, no consequences, sadly. And the Kotel Agreement was tabled. Now we have a new government. Some of the coalition members have voiced full support to the Kotel Agreement, and we are now pushing to try to have the new government take the courageous step and find a solution at the wall. And again, the solution is separation, two plazas. When you come to the wall, your feet will decide. Do you want to go to the ultra-Orthodox side, where you're going to be you're going to be forced to wear modesty clothes by these 30 ushers that pounce on every young girl with a shmate, property of the Western Wall Heritage Foundation? Or would you rather go to where you're going to find ushers who will hand you a talis, who will encourage you to dance, to pray, to sing, to read Torah? We think this is a grand vision, and I'm proud to have been part of the Kotel Agreement. I grieve that our leaders don't have the courage to implement it. And one of the things I most want from you is to wake up, to give yourself a license to voice your support for Women of the Wall. And if you think to yourself, well, who am I? What am I? Who are the Beth Els? We're just a group of women. You are powerful, and it can be done. And as you know, nothing changes reality more than a group of committed citizens who decide to change reality. And we need your support. So some North American Jews feel that criticizing policy in Israel is something they can't do. And I must say that some Israelis actually tell them, you know, the taxi driver taking you from the airport to the hotel already tells you, you give money and shut up. You're like an ATM. You didn't go to wars like I did. You didn't pay taxes like I do. Oh, if you make aliyah, then you talk. This is a way to silence you, and many of you buy into it. Let me express the antidote. If Israel is the most important Jewish project of our lifetime, which I think it is, then when we discuss what are the values of the Jewish state, no one can tell you that you don't have a seat at the table. Of course you have a seat at the table. We're discussing what are Jewish values. Are they chauvinism, racism, ethnocentrism, or are they pluralism, equality, and tolerance? And if you have something to say, you must say it. And if women are being arrested in Israel for wearing a talis, or if 39 prayer books are torn to shreds, as you saw, and no one gets arrested, then something's wrong in how the Jewish state is running the holiest site of the Jewish people. And you have the right, no, you have a duty to voice what you think about it. And a group of women from North America who write letters to the paper, to the ambassador of Israel, to the consul general, to the prime minister of Israel, they make a difference. If there are 5 million Jews in North America, and if at least 3 million of them are Reform and conservative, then I ask myself, where are you? The answer to where are you is Hineni. Hineni is here I am. And I'd like you all to say Hineni. Just a few weeks ago, we got such good news from the Cantors Association, Women Cantors Association in North America. They have decided to help Women of the Wall by sponsoring a choir, the WOW Choir. Just imagine, right now we have a shlichat tzibur, we have one woman with a strong voice, but all the jeering and screaming, it's sometimes hard to hear her and follow prayer. We're talking about a choir of professional women who know how to project. They will be heard. And you know what God has done? The sweet spot of acoustics in the whole basin of the wall is right smack in the middle of the women's section. Thank you, God, for that. If we even drop a pin there, you can hear it. So we're going to place our choir right there in the sweet spot, and they will lead us in prayer, and we will hear them all over. Kol Isha, the voice of a woman. I wonder, Nechama, if you could show us another video of how it is to try to bring a Torah scroll to the wall. Is it possible or not?
Absolutely. I have it ready.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay.
and smile. I could do that. 'Cause no one knows me, no one ever will. If I don't say something, take that dry blue pill. They may see a monster, they may run away, but I have to do this. I can't keep quiet. No, no, oh, I can't keep quiet. No, no, no one woman right. Oh, I can't keep quiet. There'll be someone who understands. Must be someone who understands. There'll be someone who understands. I can't keep quiet. I can't keep quiet. I can't keep quiet. No, I won't keep quiet.
So there, these were my statements, and now I'm dying to hear yours. And if you start speaking without unmuting yourself, you make my day, because for me to say to one of you, unmute yourself, Barbara, it makes me very happy. So just let's do it.
Just for efficiency's sake and for avoiding the balagan of a lot of people, it's wonderful that we have so many participants. If you would like to ask a question, click on the reactions thing and then raise your hand, just like that. That's what it'll look like. And then we can call on you and you can unmute. If you're having trouble doing that and you would like to unmute yourself, go for it. All right, Michelle is up first.
First of all, I want to say thank you for coming here and sharing with us. As one of those people who've gone to the wall and been shuttled in by those women, and even though I was appropriately covered, they decided I was not. So if one were to come to Israel and wanted to participate, you'd have to reach out to Women of the Wall ahead of time.
Nechama, why don't you take that one? Explain, how do you coordinate these things?
Thank you, I will. If you know that you're coming to Israel, please just drop us an email. Our addresses are on our website or through Facebook. Let us know you're coming. We love to give our friends from abroad aliyot to come and join us for Torah reading. And we would love to see you, but it's just a matter of letting us know you're going to be there. And if for some reason you don't and you get there that morning, it's Rosh Chodesh, come anyways.
And I would add that please time your visit to Israel around Rosh Chodesh. It's famous. It's in every Jewish calendar. You just make sure that if they're telling you come in March, make it during Adar Bet, Rosh Chodesh Adar Bet, which falls in March. And I think it's for us, it's wonderful that you come. And this Wednesday is Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph, and we're expecting those tourists from America. They mean so much for us. And they are braving it. It's no picnic. And yet it's a very, very meaningful prayer. You think that with all the shouting that's going on, what prayer would you be able to get in? Because, we're thinking that the best prayer is when the whole congregation goes to a retreat in the forest and between the rustling of the leaves. That's when you really get wonderful prayer. Well, it turns out that it's not the only condition. It turns out that when you are with a committed group of women and you are ignoring all the shouts, and suddenly the prayer becomes very real, and the word suddenly means so much. When it says, "Pitchu li sha'arei tzedek," open the gates of justice, you feel it in your bones.
Thank you, Anat, and thank you, Michelle, for that question. I'm going to call on Marguerite in a second. I'm going to jump in and ask a question too, even though I didn't raise my hand. I'm curious over the years, Anat, if there's any one particular time at the Kotel, whether on Rosh Chodesh or for a holiday, that feels like the most successful time that Women of the Wall had.
Well, it's going to be this Wednesday, of course.
Of course.
I thought you were going to ask what mistakes we've made. I have a list.
Well, maybe someone else can ask that question.
But there were such highlights at the wall, truly wonderful highlights of guests that came from that gave us a message of encouragement and strength. We've had bat mitzvahs to girls that otherwise would not have had it. One of the hardest parts of my job is that when a bat mitzvah girl calls, I cannot promise her a Torah scroll. Oh, you'd ask, you don't have a Torah scroll there? Oh, there are 150 Torah scrolls there for public use. But you know what, ladies? We cannot enjoy them. The rabbi refuses to let women hold the Torah, gaze at the Torah, in any way have a relationship with the Torah. So we hide the Torah. We bring the Torah in ways which I cannot disclose to you. Every month we try. We don't succeed very often. I would say we succeed 1 in every 5 or 6 attempts. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that Jewish women who want to read Torah, who are very proficient in reading Torah, are trying to sneak a Torah to the holiest site of the Jewish people and are being caught by the Israeli police. And the Torah is confiscated. It shouldn't be that way. Green smoke should be coming out of your ears. That Torah is not available for women, and that the women who bring Torah from home are in danger, and the Torah is, there's physical search on our bodies to make sure we're not hiding the Torah. And yet we are able to bring it, as I said, every few attempts.
Wow. Thank you, Anat. Marguerite.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm wondering what you think are the chances that the new Israeli government will honor the agreement that was made with Women of the Wall. And if they do you think that the ultra-Orthodox who and the police who get in your way will honor that agreement as well?
The chances are not high if all we are looking at is how pressure that Israelis will exert on their government. The chances are very high if North American Jews, the Reform movement, the conservative movement, the Reconstructionist movement, that the thousands of North American rabbis, all graduates of the JTS and the Hebrew Union College, all these people make a statement. If Hadassah made a statement, AIPAC made a statement, ADL, AJC, you are all members of these organizations. If they all came up with a statement to the new Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Bennett, and said, let their Torah go. How is it possible that it isn't a criminal offense in Israel for a woman to read Torah? It's intolerable. This is 2022. Wake up. If you guys woke up, I am telling you, this can be done.
Thank you. Barbara.
Hi, first of all, thank you, Anat. You are one of the best speakers I have ever heard, ever.
Thank you.
This is all new to me. So here is my question. I am presuming women vote in Israel, right? Just as men vote. Why does that not matter to the government? Why do the opinions of women not have the power to make these things happen, to make the government act as they wish the government to act? Is it because the ultra-Orthodox women are a stronger group than, I don't understand why the government doesn't cater to the wishes of their constituents more than they seem to. And especially, I mean, Netanyahu, studied in the United States, lived in the United States, certainly is a modern man. And so I would love to hear your comment on that, because it's something I don't understand, why women don't have more power to make this happen in Israel.
First, this is an excellent question, Barbara. As you know, women don't, it is not a given that women vote according to a feminist agenda. In fact, look at Hillary Clinton. The fact that you had a female candidate and she didn't win, even though there are many women in the United States. It's not the only considerations when someone goes to vote is what is my stance as a woman. Particularly in Israel, there are other considerations, economic considerations, security considerations that come before freedom of prayer at the wall. Number one. Number two is the fact that if there's something that the ultra-Orthodox monopoly, that there is a monopoly on all religion in Israel by the ultra-Orthodox. A prime example is the fact that Israelis cannot marry a civil marriage. There is no civil marriage, no reform marriage, or no conservative marriage in Israel, which is recognized by the state. Only Orthodox. And worse, no reform divorce, no conservative divorce, and no secular divorce. Only religious divorce. And religious in Israel means Orthodox. There's no public transportation on Shabbat. There is no way, until recently, there was no recognition of reform and conservative conversions in Israel. This is just a few months ago, the court recognized it. So everything religious is under the ultra-Orthodox monopoly. And Israel is 74 years old almost. And all Israelis who were born in Israel, and most Israelis who were born in Israel by now, never saw an alternative. So my anger at the ultra-Orthodox is that they robbed generations of Israelis from the ability to imagine that things could be different. I had to go to Los Angeles to witness that there's another way to be Jewish. I didn't know that. I thought there's just one way. In fact, I have a sticker on my car that says there is more than one way to be Jewish. And occasionally people take the air out of my tires, because in Israel to say that there's more than one way to be Jewish is a very subversive statement. Your children say, duh, of course there's more than one way to be Jewish, but not in Israel. So Israelis can't even imagine that there will be equality at the wall. And I started telling you that women of the wall did not evolve naturally here. It came from abroad. It came from women who knew better. And I'm very grateful to them, but most Israelis are not yet on board. And I think our best soldiers are the ones I'm looking at right now. North American women with the understanding of what I'm telling you now, that there's something very wrong with how Israel runs its religious affairs. Israel is an astounding state in so many ways, but when it comes to Judaism, we're quite bankrupt and corrupt. And God help us if Israel imports its sorry products of Judaism to you. The reason I'm saying it is because the Israeli government is thinking of doing just that, sending to your congregation a shlicha, a messenger, Orthodox, to teach you something about Jewish identity, because you see, you just don't have it. Only we know how to build a Jewish identity. God help us if this happens. Because what Israel, the Judaism we have in Israel is really one of the failures of our state. It is not the Disneyland of the Jews. It is not the Club Med for the Jewish soul that it was supposed to be. It is an ultra-Orthodox dominated religion. And that's not good for Judaism. It's not good for ultra-Orthodoxy, and it's not good for Israel. And I invite you to have a voice. If you're a member of Hadassah, it's time Hadassah had a resolution on giving Torah to women of the wall and implementing the wall agreement. If you're a member of the ADL, the same. And if you're in AIPAC, it's high time. I spoke at AIPAC. It's high time we saw this as a major issue that involves American interests in Israel. Look, in Saudi Arabia didn't allow women to drive, and the United States lowered its support of Saudi Arabia. They saw that as a major issue of human rights. Well, confiscating our Torah, destroying our prayer books without any consequences, and not allowing us to express ourselves freely is something that you should, as Americans and as Jews, you have the duty to speak out about. I think I made this point, so you got it.
Thank you on that. Our next question comes from Gail and then from Franny.
Okay, I need to catch my breath because this is such an emotional topic, and I'm just astounded that I've never heard of it before. I never heard of this issue before. So, I mean, I know generally about the issue, but the specific issue I never heard of before. And very, very disturbed because I wish I had been active years ago, also when you needed us. So I'd like to know specifically who to pressure and how to do it individually, or should I be trying to work more with a group like Hadassah? Is that much more productive than me sending my own letters? And then what points to make? I just went on your website and I don't see really any guidance, and maybe there's a place that's there, guidance about the points that I should make in my communication. That would be helpful. And also, and there's a lot of questions, I apologize, but also whether we should be pressuring any groups or individuals in the US government to act.
Not to interrupt, but maybe you could share that kind of information with Rabbi Paskine, who could share it with all of us.
Exactly.
So that we have a written something about here are actions you can take. And I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Shoshana and Chama, we're going to make sure that by next Sunday, you're going to have a few ideas of what to do. But Gail, let's look at why you didn't know about it. And I think Rabbi Paskin could be the first person we ask. How come this is not something that is riveting North American Jews?
You muted?
I'm not muted. But I am having feedback. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's better. I think that it is riveting to some American Jews, but I have not felt it riveting all of American Jewry. In advance of our program today, I went and checked the Rabbinical Assembly website. That's the professional organization of conservative rabbis who I know do work with you, Anat, and with Women of the Wall. In the video, the second video that we saw, I think, the past CEO of United Synagogue for Conservative Judaism, Rabbi Steve Wernick, was carrying one of the Torah scrolls with you. So in our movement, I know that the leadership is committed and has been committed for many years. And I have spoken about women of the wall in both of the congregations that I have served. And I believe that many rabbis do, but you're right. It doesn't seem to have really gotten its hooks in.
Why? What
everybody.
do you think? What is wrong with our story? When you get resistance, where is it from? People say to you, I don't want to hear bad news about Israel. I just want to rah Israel round the clock. Rabbi, don't tell me something. There are warts on Israel's butt.
There are. Absolutely. I rant about the rabbinate on occasion. When I go to Israel, the Kotel is not usually a place that pulls me. If I'm being completely honest, I would rather go visit a Masorti community somewhere. There are places that I feel comfortable as a Jew, and those are the places that I go to. And
my question relates to Gail. How did we miss Gail in 33 years? How come?
Yeah, and Gail is
I wonder
Gail
how
is an
we
active,
missed.
Gail is an
How did we
activist.
miss her? Huh. I'm asking because I believe there are a million Gails, and I'd like to know what is the key. How can I make sure that every North American Jew knows that this is something that came from America, been supported by North Americans? The Kotel Agreement was reached by the Reform Conservative and Women of the Wall, and it's time to push this government to implement it. I don't know how to do that.
I mean, I don't have a wonderful answer for you. I don't.
By next Sunday, I send you material. You send me your thoughts on that, because Gail is a power and a nuclear plant, and I missed her. I want to know how I can make sure I don't miss any more. So we both have our homeworks by next Sunday.
All right. Well, Gail, I'm glad that you're here, and I can already tell by some of the comments that there are other folks who are feeling a fire ignited in them that you articulated today. Questions from Franny.
Hi. First off, wow. I was crying from the second video just because of the beautiful work you've done and seeing the young girls being able to have a voice. But also it's heartbreaking. And I have to tell you, Gail is a major activist. There are not a million Gails. The fact that Gail is ignited here could be a big deal for you. I know her personally, and I've worked with her. So I only knew a teeny bit about the Women of the Wall through an Aleph program in the North. You know, it's the Renewal Aleph. And I heard someone speak there, but I knew so little. And a question I had the same question Gail had, like, who should we write to, that kind of thing. But I feel so grateful because there are so many, more than one way to be Jewish here. I mean, I study at various synagogues I kind of take the best and leave the rest because I like so many different things, and I'm just feeling so much gratitude that I can do that. The other thing is, we are not as tough as the Israeli women, I can tell you. I mean, yes, some women came from wherever and started it, but the video had me a little fearful about going to the wall on Rosh Chodesh. So my question to you is, if we wanted to come do that, do you come up against physical resistance like that, where the woman was thrown down every time someone tries to go through that security point? Because I'd be a little bit afraid, and I'm older, you know, and I'm not sure that I'd want to deal with like physical violence. So I'm just wondering, I have that question.
You are safe. It's one of the most guarded places in the Middle East. There are at least 100 ushers, policemen, and security guards around you, whether you see them in uniform or not. It's no picnic in that there's a lot of noise and cursing. If you are enveloped within us, within our group, you are safe. This video shows the women who are on the sidelines. The woman you saw being pushed was Rachel Yeshurun, our most feisty board member. And she knows the guy who pushed her. I mean, they have a history. See, she's the one who many times gets the Torah in, and that they see it as an insult to their male ego that she was able to outsmart them. But I want to ask you, Franny, about those tears. Where were they from? What brought you to tears? What was it that made you so sad?
Not so sad. It was just emotional. I think with the music and the young girls and your whole that you have to even do this, that you have to fight so hard. I did not realize how, and now I mean, my Israeli friend says to me, I hate the Orthodox, and I would take it like, oh my God, how can you speak like that? Like I didn't really understand exactly what was going on in Israel. So this was wonderful, and the more
I was going to invite you not to be sad, but to be angry. And I know there's studies that look at little girls, and girls identify emotions more accurately and faster than boys, except one emotion. They mix up sad with anger. They get these two confused, which explains a lot of women's depression, that when we are angry, sometimes the tears come up. And I am angry. I'm angry that I am unable to offer every young Israeli girl who wants to have a bat mitzvah, I can't offer her a bat mitzvah. Well, there's a whole industry of bar mitzvah on the other side of the partition. I can't offer her a bat mitzvah because the center of the bat mitzvah is reading from the Torah, and I can't promise her a Torah scroll.
Thank you for your question, Franny. Marguerite, and then Jessica and Lawrence, and then Jody.
So I knew about Women of the Wall because the rabbi at the synagogue where I grew up, Deborah Cantor, was arrested it was 9 years ago. For putting on a talit and going with the Women of the Wall to daven. So I knew about the struggle for a long time, but I'm going to take your bait. What mistakes have you made?
I think the biggest mistake was going to the Supreme Court. I have mediating circumstances. It was exactly the year where Lea Shakdiel won a Supreme Court petition to become the first woman to sit on a religious council in the town of Yerucham. A decision unanimous by 5 judges, and I thought, wow, if the Supreme Court can put a woman in the religious council, the first one, they will rule in our favor. Here's the game when you go to the Supreme Court. If you're in the court, you can't change any facts on the ground because you have placed your faith in the court. So while we are waiting for the court to rule whether women have the right to read from the Torah or not, we are not allowed to bring the Torah and read from it. So I didn't realize that foot dragging is a political tool by the Supreme Court of Israel. They are a brave, strong court, but when it comes to hot boiling potatoes, they foot drag. We were in court for 17 years. That was a mistake. In the end, we succeeded in the magistrate court in Jerusalem because what happened was in 2012, the police decided that because I'm a troublemaker, the best way to stop the Women of the Wall and all that provocation, just as a note, a day without a provocation is a wasted day. Okay, but to stop all these provocations, let's ban Anat from going to the wall for 90 days. Boom, they took me to Judge Kaduri, an Orthodox judge, and he immediately approved 90 days. She's not allowed at the wall. The police saw that worked so well that the next month they took 5 of our board members and wanted to ban all 5 of them. But this time they didn't get to Judge Kaduri. They went to Sharon Larry Bavli, a feminist. Larry Bavli is a hyphenated name. And she said, wait a minute, the regulation says anyone performing a religious act contrary to local custom. Who decides local custom? The police immediately turned to the rabbi. They said, he decides. And she asked, show me where the government of Israel has given him the power to decide local custom at the wall. No one has ever seen that piece of paper. This piece of paper was never written. The police lost and made a big mistake. They appealed. They appealed to Judge Moshe Sobel. Sobel is an Orthodox judge, but at home, 5 daughters. And Judge Sobel wrote an 8-page verdict where he says, the wall has been in Israeli hands for 54 years. Women of the wall have been there for 33 years. I rule they are local custom. And since the Sobel decision, we are able to wear our talit proudly. We are able to put on phylacteries. We're able to pray out loud, light the menorah, read the Megillah, bless the minim on Sukkot, everything except the Torah scroll. The Torah scroll, we have to have the object from which to read. You realize Sobel has allowed us to read, but we can't bring the object from which to read. You understand legally how crazy that is? I have the right to do an activity, but I'm not allowed to bring the object that is required for that activity. That's where we are with the Torah. And I want to let our Torah go. And I believe in your voices and your strength. Your letters to the Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, or to the Israeli ambassador in Washington, Mike Herzog, or to the President of Israel, Yitzhak Herzog, who's the brother of that Mike Herzog, and also writing your local paper in Connecticut, waking up other people. Maybe there are 1 million liberal Jews in North America who will raise their voices. If there are, it will. Ask me how I know that your influence will work. I'll tell you how I know. Every Orthodox party in Israel has a platform. In their platform, they swear to Almighty God that only reform and that only Orthodox conversions will be recognized in Israel. That they promise that. And here we are, 74 years later, and reform and conservative conversions are recognized for purposes of Aliyah in Israel, and now also conversions in Israel by reform conservative rabbis are recognized. Why is it? How could this happen? It's you. On the issue of conversion, you jump out of your skin, you rent planes, you come in great missions, and you say, over my dead body, you will call my sister-in-law or my daughter-in-law not Jewish. I want you to broaden the menu and bring women of the wall to be another thing that you are willing to die for. You'll succeed.
Thank you, Annette. I see that it's 12:01 and I see 3 hands raised. And so I'm going to invite these 3 questioners to ask, and whoever can hang around for a few more minutes, you are encouraged to hang around. Lawrence and Jessica.
Oh, I just wanted to echo what Franny said. I've been to Israel many times, and the idea of going to the wall and being in that, what looks to me like a mob, with potentially getting hurt, potentially spending my trip to Israel in jail, has no appeal to me. I mean, seriously, if I'm going there for 10 days, I'd rather go to the Jewish Museum. I'd rather do a lot of other things. I go to the hotel, but being part of that I wouldn't go for that, because I'm there for other things and it's scary. That's one. 2, when you said it, I knew about the women of the wall, but what I didn't know is that the issue is the Torah, because every time I go to Israel, I see women praying. I could go pray. I could do all that. So my perception was that this is a very radical feminist issue. And I didn't understand the specific of the Torah, but I thought I didn't understand that, but I thought that it was a very feminist issue, that perhaps they wanted the whole side of the wall, not that they wanted, I didn't understand the details, but I've been to Israel and I could go there. But protesting and going for Rosh Chodesh is not, I would actually avoid it just because I'm not willing to get trampled. And
it's certainly understandable, and the cynic in me, but also sadly, if an American woman went there and accidentally got pushed, that would, I'm not suggesting you do it. I'm just saying that aspect is sad about how the world is. But on the feminist piece, I just want to understand, clearly there are a few men on this Zoom, and your approach is to talk to the women, makes perfect sense. But how are you trying to attract the men that are supportive of women's issues? And God knows there are plenty in America also, by the way. But anyway, how do you go about that?
But first I want to talk up to Jessica. Jessica, this is something I can't explain from Connecticut. In Connecticut, where you're sitting, it looks crazy to go to the wall to see this mob. It sounds, but I am telling you, after 33 years of speaking to women who joined us and say to me with tears, this was the highlight of my trip. This is where I felt the most connected to Israeli women, to my Judaism, to prayer. I will never say no to Torah again. I now realize what a privilege it is to fight for Torah and to be able to read from it. I was moved. I'm so glad you pushed me to come. That's all I can say. And as for the men, the first men that joined us were the paratroopers, the original paratroopers from 1967 who fought for the wall. They come with their red caps. They are now in their 70s. And these Altekakers are coming to say, we freed the wall from the Jordanians, but it's you women who are liberating the wall today. And you get to see them if you come. So we have a few, between 50 and 100 men that come to support us. That's no picnic. The men are being picked on worse than we are. And yeah, but still, if you're looking at, injuries, we have not had in 33 years serious injuries. Yet we have a strong group of men. They actually have earphones so they can hear us praying at the women's section, and they join us with our Siduim. For men, it's also a very important experience.
Thank you for those questions, Jessica and Lawrence. Jody, if it's okay with you, I'm going to call on Wendy and then going to let you go last. Wendy.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I went on a trip a few years ago. And the reason I went on the trip I did was because they were going to go to the wall. And I will say it was one of the highlights of the trip, even though we saw that they had sent in women police to take the Torah away, to try to get the Torah. But my question for you is, when they confiscate your Torah, the Torah, do they keep the scrolls, or do you get them when you leave? No, I'm asking
Wendy,
seriously,
what a great question.
What happens to the...
So let me tell you how this is one of the smart moves we made. We wrote the whole Jewish world that we're looking for a small Torah scroll, no bigger than an infant and no heavier than an infant, a newborn. And we were offered, from all over the world, but the best Torah was offered by Temple B'nai Israel from Sacramento, California. And they wanted to give us little Rudy. Rudy is a Torah scroll that was written 300 years ago in Germany and survived the Holocaust, and weighs 3.2 kilo, like a newborn. We insisted that they don't give it to us. It's still owned by B'nai Israel. The police knows that if they take it, we will go to the court. B'nai Israel versus the state of Israel. the children of Israel versus the state of Israel. This is our Torah, give it back. So the result is that they confiscate it and they give it right back. Just not allowing us to take it to the wall and read from it. Recently, with the new government, there are two members of Knesset, Gilad Kariv and Alon Tal, who are bringing the Torah to Women of the Wall. I'm reminding you that members of Knesset have immunity. They can walk in with the Torah scroll in their arms and hand it to the women.
Because when I was there, they were reading from the Torah scroll. So I guess
So
I
you
was
were in
lucky.
one of the lucky times, yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I also was able to go once, and the Torah was read from, and it was very powerful.
Wonderful, yeah.
Jody, I'm going to give you the last word.
Okay. Well, I'm responding back to, the questions of what can we do here in Connecticut and other people across the country who are listening in. Here in Connecticut, we're very fortunate in that we have a Jewish U.S. Senator, Richard Blumenthal, and I've put his contact in the chat. I think he is certainly somebody that we should be reaching out to. Upon request from Marguerite, I also put our U.S. Senator Chris Murphy's information in our chat. And I certainly think those are places for us in Connecticut to start. Somebody else, I think, put in the chat about sharing the story on social media. And I think for us, having this program is a start because now we have, 45 screens, maybe 75 people who are now informed and can help spread the word. But certainly reaching out to our U.S. senators is a start. And this recording will be on our website, and feel free for everybody to share it.
Jody, this is a wonderful gift. This is wonderful. If senators will bring this up and demand from Israel, I realize that Israel receives from the United States an enormous amount in civilian and military aid. If anyone in the Ways and Means Committee would mention to the Israelis that this is a major aberration of civil rights, that would be very helpful. Because if you look at the report on religious rights in the Middle East done by your State Department, Women of the Wall are in the first chapter of the Israeli report. I know because we actually basically wrote it for the American Embassy. It is considered a major case of religious discrimination. That could be very, very helpful. I want to tell you that just in closing, this is many years of marriage speaking. I believe that love is what remains after we know the truth. We spoke some hard truths about Israel today. We didn't discuss the cherry tomato or the disc on key and some of the great Israeli innovations and how many Israelis won the Nobel Prize. And Israel really is a source of tremendous pride. But Jewishly we have major flaws, and it is our joint responsibility, because Israel reflects on the North American Jew, it affects the North American Jew, and we must see an Israel that lives up to its dream. And I'm an Israeli turning to you, myself, of course, Shoshana and Nechama too, and we are extending hands and we're saying, let's work together to mend Israel.
Thank you so much, Anat. I just shared in the chat here all of the different ways that you can be in touch with and follow Women of the Wall on social media. And so, feel free to drop that into your own browsers now so you don't lose it. I want to thank Anat and Shoshana and Nechama so much for coming and sharing a lot of struggles and a lot of passion with Congregation Beth El and the Beth Els. We are so grateful for the work that you do and for taking the time to share with us. And I'm feeling so strongly that you are an embodiment of what Herzl always said, Im tirtzu ein zo agada. If you will it, it is no dream. You are making change in Israeli society. And I know many of us are really pumped to join in with you. So thank you so much.
Laila Tov, good night.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Have a good day.
What am I going to have?